Okay, can I please request that all phones be switched to silent? I declare the meeting open and welcome you to the September meeting of Council. The recording of this Council meeting will be available to the public on Council's website for a minimum period of 6 months. In accordance with Council policy, I will now ask Council staff to confirm that recording has commenced. Thank you, Sandy. I'd first of all like to acknowledge that we meet today on the land of the Malacca people, the traditional custodians of this land. Our Aboriginal people have a deep spiritual connection to country. They've cared for our waterways and our land for over 40,000 years in Tasmania. And we pay respects to their customs, elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the gallery that are here today. We've expanded our gallery to 8 people, which is double the amount to what we normally do, so that's really great. So it's good to see some more people here today. And I'd like to introduce you to our councillors as well. First of all, we do have Deputy Mayor Sally Doyle, who has recently undergone some surgery, so she's not joining us in person tonight, but she will be joining us by phone for this meeting. And so we have Councillor Campbell, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Lovell, Councillor Prince, Councillor Clark, Councillor O'May and then Councillor Newell. Introducing to you our General Manager, Jason Brown. And Jason, if you would just like to introduce the directors and the staff that are here today, please.
Yes, we've got Lachlan Krantz, who's sitting across 2 portfolios as the Director of Infrastructure Services and Acting Director of Environment and Development Services. And we've got David Spinks, our Director of Corporate Services, Rebecca Stevenson, our Director of Community Services, and Michael Bartlett will be coming along to sit through the Planning Authority and Manager of Development Services. Sandy Rustel, our Executive Assistant, and Michael Blazer, our ITC Officer. All right, lovely, thank you. Ta.
Apologies. So we have an apology from Matthew Grimsey. So he's on a leave of absence, apology for that. And otherwise, all councillors are present for this meeting. So declarations of interest. Councillors, is there any item on tonight's agenda that you have a declaration of interest? No? I do. Oh, you do? Yes, of course. That's the one for the last. All right, thank you. So recording, the General Manager has will be stepping out for reference number 20.066/21, and that's a closed agenda item. Thank you for that. All right, so we'll go on to confirmation of minutes. Do I have a councillor to move the minutes for the ordinary meeting of council on Wednesday the 25th of August? Thank you, Councillor Lovell. A seconder, please. Councillor Gibson. Any questions or suggested amendments to those minutes? No? All right, then I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's and what about Sally? Deputy Mayor Doyle. Are you for that motion?
I sure am. I have my hand up.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. Right, so then we go on to item 5. There are no legislative items. Item 6, there are no urgent matters. And announcements is the next section we have. So are there any announcements? No? I do have an announcement, but I realise I think I left my briefcase next door. Rebecca, would you better just check, please, to see if I've got my briefcase? Sorry? There should be a copy on the desk. Of my announcement? Oh, lovely, thank you. You're so organised. It's all right, it's all good. Thank you. All right, so tonight I would like to spend some time talking to you about the General Manager recruitment. But before I start, I'd like to give thanks to the many people in the Huon Valley that I and my fellow councillors have worked alongside what is almost 3 years of a 4-year term. We've worked together through the challenging times of bushfires and COVID and shared our successes too along the way. When we first started in our roles, none of your councillors could have foreseen this moment arising in our 4-year term on council. We apologise to our community and our staff for the recent negative focus that the council has experienced through publicity around the General Manager recruitment. We know that this negative attention has been upsetting, and we share those feelings. We also understand that some members of the public have used the word corruption and made assertions that individuals or your council has committed a crime under the Criminal Code Act 1924. Understandably, reading these words would be disturbing for anyone, and for some even a fear would be evoked. For this reason, we requested legal advice from Mr David Morris from Simmons Wolfhagen's lawyers, and he advised that in his opinion there is no evidence to assert that a crime has been committed under the Criminal Code Act 1924 by Mr Brown, Joanne Inches of Red Giant, the Mayor, fellow councillors and any council staff. We felt it was important to provide this level of assurance to the public. We wanted to provide factual information to the public around the conflict of interest. We commissioned an external review by Edge Legal, due in most parts by the concerns raised from some members of the public about the GM recruitment process in relation to the conflict of interest. These concerns were raised after Council received an earlier report that confidential information from the GM recruitment process had allegedly been leaked to the Tasmanian Times. At that time, I lodged a complaint with the Director of Local Government about this alleged breach, and the matter is currently with the Director of Local Government. The external review sought to identify whether the General Manager recruitment panel, which consisted of 4 councillors including myself, appropriately considered the identified conflict of interest between the chosen candidate and Red Giant, the agency used by Council to assist in the recruitment process. The review did find that Council's management of the recruitment process fell below the expected standards for the management of conflicts. The recruitment panel accepts that it did not take a best practice approach to managing the conflict, and this led to the perception and speculation in the community that there had been a bias in the recruitment process of the new General Manager. The review found there was no breaches of the Council's Code of Conduct, the Local Government Act or the Council Governance Framework. Equally as important, there was no evidence the recruitment was tainted by actual bias. The perception there was a bias in the process has impacted some of the public's view of Council's decision-making processes, and I understand that from the outside looking in and not having knowledge of and appreciating all of the facts, it could appear that we did not show due diligence. I would like to assure the community and our staff that as soon as the recruitment panel became aware of the conflict of interest, we implemented control measures to manage it, while the review found that these control measures did not adequately address the perception of bias. The review did find there was no actual bias in Council's resolution of Mr Brown as the preferred candidate for the role. The review into the recruitment process has made it clear to Council what actions we should have taken. Council accepts that it needs to learn from its mistakes and will adopt a best practice approach for managing conflict of interest in the future. We will implement all recommendations from the review. We will implement a guideline or supporting document to the Code of Conduct as a best practice approach to managing conflicts of interest in recruitment, and councillors will undertake training in relation to managing conflicts of interest. Council has already started the process by seeking proposals to meet their commitment to signing off on the recommendations. We contacted the Local Government Association of Tasmania to help us identify appropriate training specialist providers. We now have a list of those providers. Once established, the new guidelines would be used as a tool for recruitment and other situations, particularly where panels or committees are used for decision making on behalf of Council. Councillors also agreed to undertake training in relation to the setup and best use of panels and committees to maximise efficient and effective decision making. Key areas of focus will be the function and scope of a panel or committee, and when it is appropriate to report back to the full council for further guidance, including how to progress in circumstances where a consensus is unable to be reached, how to engage in robust but respectful discussion, the importance of note-taking, as well as discretion throughout the conduct of the process, and how to give adequate reasons in making decisions. Council stands by its decision of who it recruited. Jason Brown is an excellent choice to ensure the council will remain sustainable and relevant for future generations. Council sent a copy of the Edge Legal Report to the Director of Local Government, and at the request of the Tasmanian Audit Office, we sent them a copy of the Edge Legal Report so they could undertake a review. The Tasmanian Audit Office has been undertaking audits of the local government sector for the purpose of reviewing GM recruitment, appointment and performance assessments. The objective is that the Auditor-General will inform the Parliament in October of this year on identified better practice relating to General Manager recruitment, appointment and performance assessment. It is also to provide some practical recommendations to improve future General Manager recruitment, appointment and performance assessment activities. The Council is answerable to its authority. At every point, we have provided information to both the Tasmanian Audit Office and the Director of Local Government without hesitation and without delay. We will continue to operate in this manner, and look forward to opportunities for further development that will result in best practice in local government. Tonight, the Council will be considering and closed the independent review of the General Manager recruitment process, which is legal advice that we have received on the release of information. A media release will be issued after tonight's meeting in relation to this report. To assist with transparency, Council has a dedicated page located on its website which has information and documentation about the GM recruitment process. And you will find that under huonvalley.tas.gov.au/consultations/general manager appointment. With each piece of documentation that's released, that will be added to that particular page so that it's easy accessible to the public when they want to get an update. Thank you. So, we now go on to public participation. And we don't have any answers to previous questions taken on notice, but we do have a question on notice, and Mr. Donnelly did request that to be withdrawn, but we're actually unable to do that. It needs to stay there. I will read that out. The question is, how many applications for General Manager were received between the dates of the 17th of May and the 26th of May? Was the extended date published so all potential applicants had another week to submit their applications? And if not, how did any applicants who did apply in this extra week hear about this extended window? And the answer is a fairly lengthy one, but we'll start. The position was advertised by Red Giant on Seek, LinkedIn and Red Giant's website on the 5th of May 2021. This coincided with a notice published by the Council in the Mercury newspaper advising of the General Manager vacancy. The closing date for applications was initially advertised as the 24th of May. As it had been agreed with the recruitment panel, there would be a 3-week advertising period. This date was extended by Red Giant to the 26th of May to ensure it met the 3-week agreed timeframe. The closing date for applications was never advertised as the 17th of May 2021. The only reference to this date was in the proposal submitted by Red Giant to the Council on the 13th of April 2021. In the proposal submitted to the Council, Red Giant had a draft timeline which indicated that an advertising period of 2 weeks commencing on the 3rd of May and closing on the 17th of May 2021. As stated earlier, it was the recruitment panel's view the advertising period should be for a period of 3 weeks. When Council was asked a question by the Mercury newspaper regarding the closing date being extended from the 17th of May to the 24th of May, the response provided was incorrect, insofar as it referred to the extension of time to allow a 3-week advertising period without reference to the full detail. The extension in the advertising period was actually 2 days, from the 24th of May to the 26th of May. Before we head into public question time from the gallery, so if you have any questions, you need to ask them through me, the chair. I'll ask you to come forward to the microphone to identify yourself, your name and the area from where you live. And to make things fair and equitable, we limit to 2 questions. Unlike other occasions, you can ask your 2 questions in one go. And then you'll resume your seat so someone else can come forward. So as I said, you're unable to refer, your questions must be referred through the chair. That's if you, or refer the question to another councillor or the general manager. I will, if that's what you are asking for. And every attempt will be made to answer your question tonight. Debate on questions can't be entered into at council, and cannot make decisions on that are issues that arise in public question time. So in addition, council will not accept or answer any questions that do not relate to the activities of the council, relate to items, for example, planning items that are on the agenda, relate to any matters which would normally be discussed in the closed council, and also, in the opinion of the chairperson, contain an insult, makes a personal reflection on a councillor or an employee of council, or imputes an improper motive on a councillor or employee of council. I have received several questions already, questions without notice. And what I might do is go through those first, because they may actually answer some of the questions from the floor as well. So we'll do that first. So we have a question from Mr. Jeffrey Swan of Lonavale. Were all councillors and Red Giant personnel required to sign a non-disclosure agreement and a declaration of conflict of interest agreement with respect to any part of the general manager recruitment process? Who did sign any such documents, and if not, why not? If such documents were signed, on what date were they signed? And our response is, there was no requirement for councillors nor the recruitment agency to sign a non-disclosure and declaration of conflict of interest agreement. The recruitment agency contract included a confidentiality clause. Councillors are required to abide by S338A of the Local Government Act 1993 in relation to the disclosure of information. Disclosure of confidential information without authority from the council is an offence under the Act. Following the alleged leak of candidate information, all councillors were requested to sign a confidentiality agreement relating to the recruitment process. There was no requirement for the councillors to sign a conflict of interest agreement in relation to the recruitment process. Councillors under the Local Government Act 1993 are required to declare any conflicts of interest at any meeting in which they participate. There have been no conflicts of interest recorded in relation to any respect of the recruitment process. The recruitment agency advised council in writing of the conflict, at which time processes were put in place by the recruitment panel to manage the conflict. It has subsequently been identified through the independent review that the conduct engaged in by the council in managing the conflict falls below the expected standards of managing conflicts. Council is committed to developing and implementing guidelines to support its code of conduct in respect of identifying and managing conflict of interest for the future. Another question from Mr. Swan. If the position of Mr. Brown as our General Manager is shown to be unattainable, as I suspect it will, does Council then have full access to the resumes of the other 84 applicants who may then be reviewed should the recruitment process need to recommence again from the start? If not, why not? And a response to that is Council is confident in its decision to appoint Mr. Brown as its General Manager, and on that basis the question is considered irrelevant. As there is only 2 questions per person, all of these questions and answers get loaded onto the Council's website, and there is a third question there from Mr. Swan, if you wish to read that later. We now have a question from Brian Miller of Signet. In past council meetings, 4 members of the public were permitted into the public gallery. As of yesterday, this number has been increased to 8. What method was used to decide on the number 4, and what was the reasoning behind increasing to the number 8? Has there been a revised public health directive from state government? And the response is, to ensure compliance with COVID requirements, the configuration of the council chambers for council meetings ensured that all 9 councillors, 5 directors and 2 council officers were able to maintain a 1.5 distance between them, including table configuration. With this layout, the space available was calculated to enable 4 people to attend the meeting as a public gallery. At the conclusion of the August council meeting, however, Mayor Enders, me, requested that staff look at ways to increase the capacity of the public gallery. The council chambers has been reconfigured for the September council meeting to enable directors to be relocated from the opposite end of the room, effectively opening up a larger area as gallery space, increasing the seating capacity of gallery members from 4 to 8. It should be noted, however, there are only 3 directors attending the September meeting instead of the normal 5. The number of directors attending will have an impact on gallery space at future meetings. The room layout of the council chambers for council meetings takes into account microphones, cameras and the lectern. The reconfiguration for the September council meeting means the remaining space available has been calculated to approximately 20 square metres. The Director of Public Health Advice states that each person conducting a business or undertaking must implement measures in respect of the business or undertaking or the workplace where the business or undertaking occurs to ensure that where practical, so 1, where practicable, each person on or at the workplace maintains a distance of no less than 1.5 metres between the person and any other person on or at the workplace. And 2, if it is not practicable for a person on or at the workplace to comply with subparagraph 1, other means or procedures to minimise the risk of the person being exposed to or contracting or spreading the disease within the workplace. And 3, the total number of persons in a single undivided space at the workplace at any one time other than exempt part of the workplace does not exceed the number calculated by dividing by 2 the total number of square metres of the floor area of that space. In line with this advice, the remaining space can accommodate 10 people. There are 2 council officers who also need to be seated in this space, which leaves the remaining space available for a gallery of 8 to attend. Council has completed COVID safety plans, as all businesses are required to do. It should also be noted that since council meetings have returned with the inclusion of a public gallery, the number of people attending council meetings have been 19th of May, 2 people, 23rd of June, 2 people, 28th of July, 4 people, and the 25th of August, 2 people. I know that was a very long response, but it does tend to prevent people asking a similar question again if we try and be as full as we can in our responses. The next question we have is from Rick Arthur of Signet. Regarding 7930 Channel Highway Signet, a machinery depot, business activity and residence. And the question reads, I believe that questions about the machinery depot, business activity and residence at this location near Signet were first asked in November 2018 when the council officers undertook to investigate this situation. Apparently there was a reminder to the council in May 2019 asking about this. Since this time, the machinery based at the dangerous location, non the corner of the highway, has doubled in size, and the council does not seem to have taken any enforcement action, or has the owner submitted a development application. And our response is there is no development application lodged for this site, and council has taken enforcement action. The use of this property is subject to an ongoing investigation by the compliance unit, and we are unable to provide specific details of the investigation or enforcement actions due to legal reasons. The next question comes from Huon Valley Residents and Ratepayers Association. Our question relates to agenda item 16.011/21. Oh, would you like to do that? Oh, sorry, Pat. Come on, come up. Yes.
From Lymington on behalf of the Huon Valley Residents and Ratepayers Association. So our question relates to agenda item 6.011/21, the review of fraud control and corruption prevention policy and procedure, and the departmental report 20.066/21 relating to the independent review of General Manager recruitment process, legal advice on release of information that is to be considered in closed council. Okay, given that Edge Legal Proprietary Limited was only registered in December of last year, our questions are, how often over the last 10 years has Mr. Rod Collinson, the co-founder and director of Edge Legal, provided legal advice to Huon Valley Council in any capacity? And is this the same Rod Collinson who prepared the Page-Seeger report that the then Council commissioned in 2016 in response to the draft report from the Board of Inquiry?
Thank you, Pat. I will respond. Mr. Collinson was previously a partner with Page-Seeger. Page-Seeger were engaged by Council to prepare responses on behalf of the Council in relation to the draft report from the Board of Inquiry. As to the number of times over the past 10 years that Mr. Collinson has provided legal advice to Council in any capacity, there was insufficient time to review all Council's files to ascertain this information for tonight's meeting. However, what I can confirm is Mr. Collinson left Page-Seeger Lawyers at the time Edge Legal was established on the 1st of July 2018. Mr. Collinson has confirmed that until being engaged to undertake the independent review by the Acting General Manager on the 3rd of September 2021, Edge Legal had not previously provided any legal services to the Huon Valley Council. It is Mr. Collinson's recollection that the last time he personally provided any legal services to the Council was when he was working at Page-Seeger in around 2016. He provided assistance to the Council in preparing responses in relation to the Board of Inquiry report. As a point of clarification, the Council delegated the securing of the independent review of the General Manager recruitment process to the Acting General Manager. The Acting General Manager, Paul West, appointed Edge Legal based on the fact that they were a Hobart-based law firm which specialised in the discrete areas of employment and safety law. The Acting General Manager, Paul West, in appointing Edge Legal, Mr Collingson, had no knowledge of any past involvement he may have had with the Huon Valley Council.
Thank you. May I ask my second question just
Yes,
now?
certainly.
Yes, thank you. Does the Mayor maintain that all Council's actions in recruiting the new General Manager are in accordance with Huon Valley Council's fraud control and corruption control policy and procedure that stipulates, among other things, that Council has, quote, a responsibility to act with integrity and not engage in activities that damage the Council's good standing?
Thank you, Pat. Council accepts with the benefit of hindsight that the management of the conflict of interest in relation to the recruitment of the new General Manager was deficient and fell below the expected standards. Council is committed to improving its processes by developing and implementing guidelines to support its code of conduct in respect to identifying and managing conflicts of interest.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I have two other questions before we take questions from the floor. The next questions come from Irene Swan of Lonavale. First question is, when Joanne Inches and Jason Brown were seen holidaying in the Huon Valley recently, it was reported that you, Mayor, met with them for coffee. This all happened before Council appointed Mr Brown to the position of General Manager. Will you confirm what was the date of this meeting, please? And my response is, your question is clearly unsubstantiated gossip, as the coffee meeting referred to did not happen. The next question from Irene Swan is, will Council please advise how many applicants for the position of General Manager were submitted to Red Giant between the dates of the 17th of May and the 26th of May 2021? And the response is that there were 40 applications received during the period of 18 to 26 of May. Thank you. So that concludes the ones that have been provided to us. For those in the gallery that would like to ask questions, you can come forward to the microphone and state your name, and we will do our best to answer you tonight. State your name and where you're from, please.
My name's Archie Donnelly. I'm from Cygnet. Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to ask that when the Council became aware that there was a conflict of interest when the number of candidates was reduced to 14, why didn't they also become aware that there was a conflict of interest in reducing the number from 85 candidates down to 14, that there was a similar conflict of interest, and how did they handle that conflict of interest?
Thank you. I think it's clearly stated. We've already admitted through the Edge Legal report that it was identified that we hadn't managed the conflict. And that is the result. We hadn't managed the conflict appropriately, and that is what...
Did you recognise there was a conflict there?
We were aware that there was a conflict to be managed, and I actually have already responded in my opening address about that we could have managed that a lot better, Mr Donnelly, and that is all I have to say on the subject. We have already reported that we haven't managed it appropriately. Thank you. Yes.
Liz Smith, Signet. My question is, what was the budget allocated for the General Manager recruitment process? How was the advertising for an employment agency done? And when will the amount of payment to Red Giant be made public?
Just going to get the advertisement because that was in the first lot of papers, I believe.
Sorry?
One of your questions was about when was the job advertised, is that correct?
First part was about what was the budget allocated for the process?
Mm-hmm.
How was the advertising for an employment agency done? And when will the amount of payment to Red Giant be made public?
Okay. The answer to the first question is I'll take that on notice for tonight into the closed council meeting to consider that to be released, because I don't believe that has been released to date.
No, it hasn't.
The answer to your third question, which was around the Red Giant, so could you just repeat that third question?
The third part was, when will the amount of payment to Red Giant be made public?
Okay, and I'll take that on notice for the closed session tonight as well to
And
consider
the second
that.
part was, how was the advertising for an employment agency done by the council?
Right. I'll just have to, I wasn't around at that time, so I do apologise. So I'll just have to see whether there is a executive staff member here that would have that knowledge. Otherwise, we will have to take that on notice and come back to you.
Thank
I do apologise, but I just wasn't involved at that point in time. I wasn't here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll take that. Did you want to answer that one?
Mayor, there was an expression of interest lodged with 3 recruitment agencies to seek quotes in accordance with our procurement process. So there wasn't an advertising period. It was an expression of interest to obtain 3 quotes.
Does that satisfy you, Dr. Smith? That response? That about the expression of interest, is that what you were after?
Yes, so only 3 employment agencies were approached in the first place.
I just have, yes, Deputy Mayor Doyle is here on the line.
There was 4.
There was 4. Right, sorry, so we'll clarify now because Deputy Mayor Doyle was acting at the time. There were 4.
There were 4 approached, and then they were presumably assessed by the General Manager recruitment panel.
Yeah, did you hear that, Deputy Mayor Doyle?
I did. Yes, they were assessed by the, at that stage,
By the panel?
by the panel, and then we took that to full council.
Full council. You took the expressions of interest to the full council.
And
So,
why we had chosen Red Giant.
And why you recommended Red Giant.
Yep, that's right.
Is it recommended? You're
No.
you chosen?
No, we had the right to choose.
Yeah, okay, right, okay, all right.
okay, so it was done by the General Manager recruitment panel alone.
No,
Then we put
And
it
the-
we had-
yeah, I think what might be best, to be honest, because it's very difficult with having the deputy, it would be best if we provide an actual proper response to that question.
Yes, I think
Because it's too disconnected between your microphone
That's all right.
and her hearing. So if you will allow us to do that, that would be good.
yes, I think there should have been reports written at the time,
Yeah.
which should now be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a copy of that question as well that you could leave? Okay, thank you, Dr. Smith. Are there any other questions before we start into the reports? All right, thank you. So we now go on to 8.2. There are no deputation addresses to council. Number 9, there are no petitions. Number 10 are general reports. And we have the General Manager's operational report listed, the Mayor's activity report. We also have the Quick Response Community Recovery Grants update, Arts and Culture Committee minutes. We have the Chair here today, which is Councillor Campbell, and the Audit Panel minutes as well. as well as the youth committee notes. So, as it's Jason's first week, it's probably not not really relevant to talk about, unless you've got some items you would like to talk there in the General Manager's report.
Yeah, there was
Oh,
a couple.
thanks. Yeah, that'd be great.
There's a couple in here, Mayor.
Lovely.
On page 3, just wanted to highlight our success with the Village Hub grant and the mental health grant. So we received, for the Village Hub grant, $295,000 over 3 years and $166,000 over 3 years for the mental health grant. We expect that engagement will commence with stakeholders this side of Christmas. And that will also establish steering groups in the same time frame for those grants.
Excellent.
And then subsequently, we also submitted, which will be of interest, is the Weed Activation Fund. So we put an expression of interest for a grant around some Zone A weeds to be managed, and that was the seeding willow, weeping sedge and ricegrass. So there's about a $67,000 grant opportunity there, and with some in-kind from ourselves, there's about $150,000 project to support.
Okay, that's good.
So
yes, weeds are very popular in the Huon Valley.
I've heard. So
unfortunately, they're popular for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Thank you for that. So we'll now go on to my activity report. I'll just pick out a couple of things of interest. So August featured quite a few meetings around the subject of local government and communities preparing for environmental changes due to our changing climate. We had a visit from the Deputy CEO of the National Recovery and Resilience Agency, Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, regarding Huon Valley Council's experiences with resilience and preparedness for natural disasters. We had a meeting with the CEO of Cradle Coast Authority to provide them with an overview of the work that has been produced and is underway through the Southern Tasmanian Council Authority Regional Climate Change Initiative Program. I attended a cultural burning community of practice meeting facilitated by the South East Tasmanian Aboriginal Corporation, and which was also attended by state emergency and environmental groups. It was very well attended. I also had 5 media interviews to promote to the public, the Huon Highway Corridor Study, which ended up having the strongest response that the government has had to a corridor study to date. We had a half-yearly briefing with our police, and that was really very productive, and we've also been advised that Huonville will be getting 2 new police officers, which is great, in a short period of time. That's probably all from me. Over to the Director of Community Services. Did you have any comments that you wanted to make about the quick response community recovery grants?
Thank you, Mayor. There's a table summarising where we're at with the awarding of the quick response grants. There is still a little bit of a balance left of those. There is also the current community grants open with 3 or 4 different streams of funding. So there's information about that on our website as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Arts and Culture Committee minutes. Would you like to speak on that?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to report that the council has received funds for a mural that's been approved and will be created by Jamin on the wall across at the hub. That's a very exciting thing. There's also a plan for a door to access from inside the hub out, so that'll give some more space. There've been some town teams that have been taking place, which has given opportunities for each town to put forward some ideas that they'd like to bring forward to the council. And we've also got the RAP plan out at the moment, and we're hoping to get, I just would actually like to ask the Director of Community Services,
so
where is that up to?
Yeah, through the chair.
Through you, Mayor.
Yep. just while Beck's looking for that, there's just in
Oh, yeah,
regards
just
to-
a couple
yeah,
of other,
mhm, yeah.
and just a couple of other things that from the 5th to the 7th of November, there's a Readers and Writers Festival being run by LJ Owen, and it's a literary festival, and there'll be people dialing in from, it's part of the Sydney Writers Festival and overseas as well, so that should be rather exciting. And we also have the Tasmanian artists and makers of the Huon, who are also running their own exhibition. So I just highly recommend that those two events, you know, be taken up by the community, because I think they're going to be very special.
Agree.
Mayor, I can provide that answer now. The engagement's actually closed on the draft RAP. The submissions are being collated. They will come back to Council for review. They have also gone to Reconciliation Australia just to consider, they've seen one draft of our RAP. They need to see the next stage of it. So we will bring an update back to the next Council meeting on the engagement summary.
Thank you, Director. Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. And it's already been day 2 of painting the mural.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
well, see, taking a bit of time off, you miss out on these things.
see the
don't you?
cherry pickers up there and
Oh,
let's move
lovely.
along.
How's
Yeah.
it looking?
Yeah, it's great.
Looks good?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So the audit panel minutes, Deputy Mayor Doyle said it.
Yes.
No, she said it might be a bit difficult for her to
Okay.
her voice to be
No problem.
heard.
I'll,
So if you wanted to, you can.
yes,
Otherwise, all right.
Oh, look, there wasn't a lot to report. We're just at the stage of looking at, you know, the annual, it was looking at the annual plan, and also now, you know, getting ready for the strategic plan,
Yeah,
the
sure, yeah.
community vision, and yes, through you, Mayor, I'd just like to again ask the Community Service Director, where's that up to in terms of, has that gone out for community? Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. There is a survey that's currently open at the moment that elected members may and community may have seen advertised. That survey will capture some of the baseline information that will feed into the vision. I'm just looking towards the General Manager, and I think there will be more of an update provided to Councillor on timelines and project plans over the next few weeks for the community vision in particular.
Okay, so will that community vision, like, will that be where councillors can go around to each of the townships and have conversations with, is that the idea?
The vision is being done in Matthew's area, so in his absence, I don't want to commit
Yeah,
too
sure.
much as
Yeah.
to what the project actually looks like, but I can confirm the survey that's currently out is some of the baseline data that's being collected.
Right.
And as to the actual engagement plan
Yeah.
and face-to-face conversations with the community, that further information will be coming to councillors shortly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's
All
all,
right.
thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. The last one on the list there is the Youth Committee notes. Did you wish to say anything to that? Was there anything that we should be gleaming from the youth that we should?
Mayor, the Youth Committee are commencing work actually on a project for Youth Week next year, so they're doing a lot of pre-planning in that space and starting to plan it out. So we look forward to seeing what that looks like. It is focusing on alcohol, tobacco and other drugs.
And hopefully they'll have a new green space to hang out in, won't they, over at the hub, which will be great. Are there any councillors tabling their activities tonight? No? Okay. Councillor Doyle, are you tabling any activities that you'll email through?
No, not tonight.
All right, thank you. Councillors, are there any questions regarding those reports? Yes, Councillor Lovell.
I just had a question through you, Mayor, to the Director of Community Services. As a matter of interest at the moment, the COVID-19 immunisations, if you could give an overview of the where, when and how for council services.
I actually have an update that's come through today, Councillor Lovell. Bear with me 2 seconds. We're sitting at, so for our 2 practices, by the 13th of October, we'll actually be sitting at 70%. So we've got a total of 59% of patients vaccinated. And we've got 2 clinics booked on the 12th and the 13th of October, we'll be reaching around the 70% mark.
So that's people that attend council.
Yep.
Owned
That's the
facilities.
vaccinations we've done through our clinics.
And so what's the go with being able to get the vaccine through them?
Yeah, so
And
appointments.
which vaccines?
Yep. Both vaccines, both Pfizer and AstraZeneca, are being delivered at Dover Medical Centre for Geeston and Dover patients. There's also a clinic booked with Public Health that's actually going to be held in October over 3 days here in Huonville. There is current conversations as well around some further public health rural clinics. So they are doing those around the state at the moment. There is conversation about further ones outside the Huonville area in the valley over the coming months as well.
Thank you. Any other questions from councillors? I actually do have a couple of questions. So, through the General Manager to the Director of Infrastructure. Under arrivals, are we now at the required level for technical officers? That's the first question I've got.
Through you, Mayor, sorry. We do have all roles currently filled on those budgeted FTEs.
Yeah, good, thank you. And do we have a full planning team as well?
We do.
That's great, brilliant. Also in the General Manager's operational report,
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And yeah, I hope the community will see a lot more of that in the not too distant future as well, because it is a key part of the changes we're bringing to infrastructure services. So the point of those 7 zones in the network is to ultimately break it up into manageable chunks. That's not just roads, that's footpaths, everything we do under the guise of infrastructure. So the zones have been based, they are part of a trial. We're trying new things and it hasn't yet been locked in, but the point of it at the moment is that we've based them around, each zone is around a population centre and the associated road network and stormwater infrastructure, etc. It means that our very extensive network will become more manageable and we can use those zones to set quantifiable targets and have measurable KPIs for my team that we can report back to both the community and to council. We can create our work schedules around that. We can start resource sharing between the various teams more effectively. And ultimately, coming back to the community, we can communicate to them what our program looks like, when we will be in a particular zone. So the plan, as well as current works where they exist. So that's how we're using it. It is part of some pretty extensive changes that we're trying to work out how we do get around our network in a more effective way and maintain the service levels that customers expect.
Thank you for that. That's great. So, yeah, look, just once again, thank you very much to the directors for their reports that they provide through the General Manager's operational report. It's a good way of everybody keeping in touch with what's happening and all the activities. So do I have a councillor to move a motion that the general reports and minutes for the period 1 to 31 August be received and noted? Councillor O'May, seconded by Councillor Prince. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And you might want to say aye, Councillor Doyle.
Aye.
Aye. And that's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now go on to item 11, council workshops. So we had one on the 8th of September, which was the Jobs Hub funding. On the 30th of March 2021, the Tasmanian Government announced a range of initiatives and funding to help Tasmanians into jobs through the delivering of local jobs for local people agenda. This includes a commitment to expanding and consolidating the network of job hubs supported by a central point of contact within the government through the creation of Jobs Tasmania within the Department of State Growth. As part of this commitment, the government has announced the establishment of a local jobs hub in Huonville. A presentation was given to provide background and information relating to the establishment of the Huon Valley Jobs Hub, and that Jobs Hub actually is Huon Valley, Channel and Bruny Island, so it includes the whole lot. So we are actually in conversation with Kingborough Council for that reason. Dark Lab update. Director Environment and Development Services provided a brief overview of the Transformer and Ida Bay proposal, and that was based on the documentation that went out and was advertised, that documentation that went out on advertisement. Waste Management in Southern Tasmania, Local Government Association of Tasmania, known as LEGAT. The CEO led a discussion on the proposal for the establishment of a joint authority to manage the contract for the processing of recycling in Southern Tasmania. LEGAT has been working with the 12 southern councils on this initiative and the best model for how it can be achieved. Further information is available through item 17.021/21 of the 25th of August 21 council meeting, which outlines the joint tendering for the processing of recycled materials for those that wish to refer back to that. The strategic analysis of recycling and resource recovery is a significant development towards achieving improved recycling, regional collaboration and improved service delivery across the southern region and Tasmania more broadly. Consultant Urban EP were engaged to undertake discussions with stakeholders, including southern regional councils, to inform the development of an opinions paper on commingled recycling and resource recovery. This work ultimately informed the development of the tender for the delivery of recycling services in the southern region, amongst other things. So we now go on to councillor questions, item 12. There are no questions taken on notice. 12.2, are there any questions without notice from councillors? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
My question is to you, the Mayor. Councillor Campbell and I sought legal advice. Councillor Campbell and I sought legal advice to understand the consequences of a conflict of interest in the General Manager's recruitment process. You directed the Acting General Manager to advise whether our actions have breached confidentiality provisions in the Local Government Act. The reason we sought the advice was because we were seriously concerned about the governance risk for our council. I was wondering if you could please explain your grounds for thinking that we should be prevented from getting independent advice under legal privilege.
Yep, certainly. It was probably as a response to the fact that we had already, with the Director of Local Government, there is already a complaint lodged with the Director of Local Government around the confidentiality leak, and it was more of a response to, we just need to make sure that we've covered all our bases because of the situation we have been in of recent times, where extremely mindful of not making any further errors, really. And it's best that we learn together as a whole, as a council, about what is permittable and what is not permittable. That was purely the reason. It was a learning exercise.
Thank you.
Just to make sure we're all continuing to be safe as much as possible. Thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors? Yes, Councillor O'May.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My question is to our new General Manager.
So through
and
through the Mayor?
Sorry?
Through the Mayor, yes.
through you, Mayor, sorry, to the new General Manager, and also our Director of Infrastructure in regards to our roads. I'm just wondering if it's possible that when our roads reach a level of deterioration, which they have been in over the last few months, in my personal view, to a level which is unacceptable to the community for safety standards as well as damage to our vehicles. I have been living down here for a large portion of my life, and I believe that the roads were as bad and worse than I've ever seen them. I've been very much paying attention to detail in regards to what's been happening in repairs lately, and our new director has undertaken some different approaches, which is my view is the first time I've seen for a long period of time any different approach taken to that which has obviously been failing dismally in adverse weather conditions. I believe that he's done an amazing job, and I want to congratulate our new director in his approach to doing this. And the portions of road that have been attended to appear to be much better. But we have been a little bit caught out by continuous rain over the last couple of months, and the roads have just been let get to a point where they have gone too far. So as my comments from the last budget of last year or this year, on both occasions, I have suggested that we be putting some more cash reserves into the benefit of the people for our roads and safety. And I don't apologise to have to bring this up again, because I believe that it's well warranted. And if my other question is in regards to, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but if at all our roads get to the situation that they're in at the moment, I have really come to the conclusion that I believe that all us councillors should get on a bus. And I've been inundated with phone calls, and deservedly so, because of the conditions. So I believe we should get on a bus and go and experience what some of the people have had to put up with in the roads in my local area and in quite a few of the other areas. So
Councillor May, your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's possible that we can take a bit of proactive of an approach to people's concerns and general safety, if we could.
Response from the Director, thank you.
Sure, through you, Mayor. And thank you, Councillor O'May, for the acknowledgement of we're trying new things, but I absolutely hear the sentiment, and you're correct in our road network is very far gone, and we have a lot of work ahead of us to pull neglected roads back. I have had some councillors go and attend our work sites and look at our network with me, and I welcome any of you to do that any time, but I'm more than happy to arrange a tour. I can take you to the best and worst of it, because I live it every day. So happy to arrange that. And if you're all willing to do it, yeah, we can get out there, get you some high vis, and go check it out.
Very good, great. Thank you very much for that, Director.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, you have a question? Councillor Campbell has a question.
Yes, thank you. Respectfully to you, Mayor. It's public knowledge that I resigned from the recruitment panel because I felt the conflict of interest was not being addressed properly by the panel. Because I felt my concerns on the conflict were not being taken seriously, I was unable to ethically continue with the process. I do have a very clear understanding of conflicts, and I was very concerned that the perceived risks could bring council into disrepute. My question is, I provided you with further research on one of the candidates who posed a risk for council, and we decided not to go ahead. And I wonder why
Can I just suggest that we shouldn't be talking about other candidates, we shouldn't be talking about candidates.
I'm not naming names. Can I not talk about a candidate?
I'm not feeling comfortable about talking about candidates because the fact is that candidates could be watching.
Okay,
and
I accept that.
I don't think
Yeah,
that's very
all right.
wise.
Okay, I'll retract that bit.
Yeah, thank you.
But if I just finish the question.
Yeah, okay.
So when the panel subsequently thought that there was a risk to council, why did you not recognise the risk that I raised on a number of occasions? And how can future panel members be assured that their opinions are listened to and discussed by the panel?
So, a number of occasions I think could be interpreted by the public in either 1, 2 or 3 or 4. What I can say is that the Edge Legal report clearly communicated to me where I could have done a lot better and should have done a lot better. And I felt that I addressed that as well in my announcement tonight. I take full responsibility for that, and I absolutely embrace the opportunity to do better, to learn. I've reflected and I want to learn, and I believe that the recommendations that have been put forward by Edge Legal, and there no doubt will be recommendations from the Tasmanian Audit Office because they are doing a review of multiple councils in regards to recruitment, and I'm sure we can learn from that as well. Local government sector will learn. So that is the best that I can say, is that I have reflected. I can see where I could have done better, and I will learn from whatever training's required and the documentation that's produced and whatever else comes our way.
Thank you for your response.
Through you, Mayor, am I allowed to
No. Thank you. The question was directed to me, and that is my question. Thank you. Are there any further questions? No? All right. Thank you. Okay, so we go on to item 13. There are no notices of motion. And we go on to our first report. The lease of the public land, Slab Road Cricket Club, Signet, and the agenda number is 15.025/21. I would like to just make a comment before we move into this, that the rental amount is the minimum rate payable of $398 per annum if you were looking for that particular amount in this report. So you might want to just jot that down if you need to. So I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion, please? Councillor Lovell. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Prince. Thank you. Councillor Lovell, do you have any opening comments?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Do I have anyone for the motion who would like to speak for the motion? Do I have... Oh, is that a hand? Okay. Do I have anyone to speak against the motion? No? All right. Do I have a councillor... Sorry, Councillor Lovell, would you have any closing comments? No? All right, lovely. So, if there are no questions by anyone? No? All right. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. That's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move on to the financial report, agenda number 16.010/21. I refer councillors once again to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Lovell. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Clark. Councillor Lovell, do you have any opening remarks?
No, thank you, Mayor. I'm
Okay.
with the report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? No? Do I have a councillor that would like to speak for the motion? Do I have a councillor that would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Doyle, are you all fine?
All fine,
All right,
thank you.
thank you. All right. So therefore, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's,
Aye.
thank you. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move on to the review of fraud, control and corruption prevention policy and procedure, agenda number 16.011/21. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report, please. Do I have a councillor to move a motion, please? Yes.
I'd actually like, if possible, to defer this motion, purely on the basis I've just done 3 days' work on the Ida Bay issue, and I just haven't really managed to get my head around it. So if other councillors are happy to defer this for a month, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Can I make comment on that?
When there's a procedural motion, there's no discussion around it. We just go straight to the vote.
Okay. I'll second that.
So you'll second that, all right? All right, so we've got that motion there at the moment, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those, I put the motion, all those in favour, please raise your hand to defer. Councillor Doyle? Are you fine to defer? The hands are all up, by the way. That probably gives you a visual.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep. Yeah, I know, you can't see, can you? So everybody else's hands were up. Yeah, okay, all right. Yep, so it's deferred.
So I can't make comment on that at all?
Not when not when there's a procedural motion on the floor.
Yep.
Yeah. So we now move to the report financial reserves as at 30 June 2021, agenda number 16.012/21. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor May, a seconder. Councillor Lovell. Okay, Councillor May, do you have any comments, opening remarks?
Yes, Mayor, through you. The only comment I'd like to make, the reserves are as we see them stated on the spreadsheet there, but if it's possible that we can find any other reserves, I know the deficit was just in the last thing that we looked at there, but I would really like to see some more action in regards to our infrastructure and roads. So I'm sorry that I have to keep bringing this up, but I really think we need some attention to detail here, with some cash to the Director of Infrastructure over there to bring up the safety to an acceptable standard for our community. That's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody that would like to speak for the motion? Is there anyone that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any questions? Okay. Look, I do have a question, because I know there's going to be a future workshop about the reduction of the incurring of operating reserves, which are noted on page 3 and 4. But I have one question regarding the description for new assets under the General Manager, page 4 of 4. And what are these amounts for? That might be through to, yes, thank you, to David. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we might actually be referring to page 3 of 4 if we're talking about new assets.
Spot mine. Apologies.
Yep, so there's two amounts there, one for 74,000 and one for 69,000.
Yeah.
So both of these amounts refer to amounts previously allocated for situations where council may be successful in obtaining a capital grant, but where we're required to make a co-contribution. So in previous budgets, council has made an allocation towards such co-contribution if necessary, and those two amounts there are the sort of the remaining funds from those allocations.
All right, thank you for explaining. Appreciate that. Councillor May, do you have any closing comments?
No, thank you, Mayor. I'm happy with the rest of it as it stands.
All right, thank you. I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And okay, that's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. We next move on to the council staffing costs. Response to question without notice from Councillor Clark. I refer, which is agenda number 16013/21. I refer councillors once again to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Clark. A seconder, please. Councillor Prince. Councillor Clark, opening remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, and thank you for the report. This obviously was action because of the viewpoint by ex-councillor Michael Wilson, and I felt it was relevant to make it public for everybody and the reasons behind the high employment costs. It's obvious that this council does offer extra services that other councils don't offer, and that is namely the child services and medical services, which contribute 23% of the costs of the employment. So that obviously is the reason why our costs are so high for employment. So thank you for doing the report, and I'm happy with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Would you like to speak for the report?
Yeah, just I'm in favour of the report, and I think the relevant information is in 2013-14 we had a 44.4% employee cost to the operations of, compared to the revenue, and in 2021-22 we had 46.6, which I consider, with the extra services we're providing, a very modest rise, and well done.
Is there any? Yes, you'd like to speak for the motion?
Yes.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, that's an excellent point, Councillor Newell, and probably along a similar lines on that, and it's probably a bit of an unpopular hypothetical, but as our rates increase, if the amount of if our rates exceed the current cost of employment, then the cost percentage of staff we employ will lower. So the fact that our cost is quite high is probably also indicative that potentially compared to other councils, we actually maintain a appropriate rate rise rate, and we aren't increasing to a point that we are left with the surplus funds that other councils might be.
Anyone wish to speak against the motion? No? In that case, Councillor Doyle, you don't need to speak, Kettle?
Only for the motion to say that everything that has been written here is thank you very much to the Director for all the hard work. But yeah, and Councillor Clark for bringing this up. But I hope it now gets put to bed that we are not doing anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah, certainly. Are there any questions at all from... No? No? Okay. Councillor Clark, do you have any closing comments?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. No.
Okay. I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Aye.
And that's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move to the proposal to formalise road names, and agenda number 16.014/21. Once again, I ask the councillors to refer to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? That's Councillor Gibson. A seconder, please. Councillor Clark. Councillor Gibson, do you have any opening remarks?
Not really. I think that these names seem to be, they reflect at least the short-term history and of the names from the area. So that sounds fine.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody wish to speak for the motion? Anybody wish to speak against the motion? Are there any questions? No? Well, in that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Aye.
And that's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. I now advise that the council is acting as a planning authority as at 7:21. In accordance with the provisions of Part 2, Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulation 2015, the Council will now act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. The planning application DA 428/2020, tourist operation use including art installation, visitor information centre, workshop and infrastructure works within Council Road Reserve and Crown Land at Ida Bay Railway, 328 Loon River Road, Ida Bay, CT 238040/1 and 245028/1. Agenda number 17.021/21. Just reiterating, I suppose, something that was mentioned in the workshops. Councillors received access on the 13th of September 2021 to all of the advertised documents associated with this DA to provide them with adequate time to consider that particular documentation that was available at the time. I refer councillors to the recommendations once again of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I would actually like to move an alternative recommendation to actually refuse the application.
Could you please, first of all, speak to the reasons for refusal before we get a seconder?
It's mostly about the heritage of the area.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Campbell. Thank you. Councillor Gibson, over to you for an opening address, please.
Thank you. Well, as far back as I can remember, Huon Valley Council has stood by the Ida Bay Railway and have campaigned to keep it working. It's a genuinely unique precinct with unarguable historic value. Dark Lab states that they have every intention of continuing an ongoing conversation with the Ida Bay Railway Preservation Society for mutual benefit for both parties and shared use of the site. If councillors reject the application tonight, it will go to the Resource Management Planning Appeals Tribunal, and under the tribunal, the approval process will be restarted, allowing Dark Lab to fulfil their commitment and make the changes to preserve the railway and sheds in operational order and relocate the cafe to an alternative site. There is a matter that's a planning matter that hasn't been fully considered in the assessment of the zoning requirement, and this allows councillors to reject the approval under the planning scheme. And I refer you to E13.7, Development Standards for Heritage Places. The objective is to ensure that demolition in whole or part of a heritage place does not result in the loss of historic cultural heritage values unless they are exceptional circumstances. And then it goes on with performance criteria. Demolition must not result in loss of significant fabric, form, items, outbuildings or landscape elements that contribute to the historic cultural heritage significance of the place unless all of the following are satisfied. There are environmental, social, economic or safety reasons of greater weight for the community than the historic cultural heritage values of the place. There are no, which I don't think is the case, there are no prudent or feasible alternatives. It's an 18-hectare site. I think there are plenty of feasible alternatives. Important structural or facade elements that can feasibly retained and will be reused in a new structure are to be retained. And the Part D significant fabric is documented before demolition, which that would be possible. But I think because all of those performance criteria are required to be satisfied, that is, it can be refused on that basis. There is another issue around zoning, which is perhaps not so important and perhaps a little less relevant too, but the rural resource zoning states that it's to provide for non-agricultural use or development such as tourism and retailing. It's only allowed where it's supports aquaculture, forestry, mining and other primary industries, and it doesn't do that. And in the performance criteria, there's, I think, an issue there with fettering of future agricultural use, because any discretional non-agricultural use must not conflict with or fetter agricultural use on the site or adjoining land. That's not such an issue, but any future agricultural use of the site would be stopped by this development. I don't want to stop the Transformer project at all. However, because it's a planning matter, it has to go into Rampat so that the process can be restarted, and then because of Dark Lab's commitment to working in conjunction with the Preservation Society, I'm hopeful that under mediation, the tribunal, Dark Lab and the Preservation Society will be able to negotiate an alternative layout that doesn't impact the historic sheds or the tracks and is supported by the community of the Huon Valley. I spoke to Legat, who were very clear that we're not bound to in all cases follow the planner's recommendations, and so yeah, I think that we should go through this process of putting it through the tribunal and mediating a better alternative that suits everybody.
Okay. I had a question from, I think it was a question from Councillor May. So just reminding everybody that you get one opportunity to make a statement. Otherwise, all the rest are questions. Questions. Councillor May, is it a question that you'd like to make at this point in time?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Gibson. I understand absolutely and agree with all of the points that you've just underlined. But I have a question of you, and you've obviously researched it well, but I have a question of you. Have you researched the implications to this council if we were to go outside of due process in regards to our duty as a planner, and have this referred to Rompat? Who foots the bill? Have you had this this line investigated at all? As I say, I agree with what all you're saying, but we have to be mindful of the fact that if you go outside the line of due process, then potentially, the way I understand it, the ratepayers potentially will have to pay the bill. So, can you please answer my question, Councillor?
I have spoken to Legat on this, and there is a small cost to council in that we can't use our planners to represent council in Rampat, and therefore would have to employ the services of an independent planner. But I mean, we are paying our planner anyway. You know, I don't think it's a huge cost for something that's as important as this. But maybe through you, Mayor, maybe the director could clarify.
Yeah, we might do that at this point, if that's okay. Yeah, thank you.
Through you, Mayor, just a response to you, Councillor O'May. A decision is following due process. So due process is to refuse or to approve. And if we're following due process and justifying our reason for rejecting, there is no, we are within our we're exercising the planning authority. You are not required to follow the recommendation of council's planners. So you're well and truly exercising due process. Not making a decision is not due process. It has to go, we need to go one way or the other. If we did not make a decision, then we would be in referral to Rempat and in a position where we could potentially incur significant costs when as the applicant is then able to move that what's the words, Michael? Yeah, the applicant will actually just be able to appeal that we've exceeded the time frame, and their appeal will be that the application is deemed to comply. Under that scenario, there can be additional reports, etc., commissioned, which would be at our cost. Under the scenario of a refusal against, so you make the decision tonight to refuse the application, and it gets referred, and it doesn't automatically get referred to RIMPAT. Someone, a representative, needs to actually make that referral, that appeal, sorry, in order for it to get there. But under that scenario, the only costs that we'll be looking at will be an alternative planner to our own, because we would be putting forward that merits-based case that's contrary to what council officers have put forward so far. So it would not be undue cost.
Yes, through you, Mayor. That is the case, that whatever decision is made today will require a process to then follow for any consideration by the tribunal. So in other words, there needs to be, following the decision, an appeal in order to ground the jurisdiction of the appeal tribunal. There's one other comment I would have in the observing the comments made so far, is that it would need to have an alternative decision that is reference to the planning scheme, and that includes, insofar as heritage is concerned, consideration of whether or not the historic heritage code in fact applies in this case. From the documentation, you'll note that the assessment of this application does not refer to that code because it's not required to. That does refer to a number of codes, to a number of planning provisions as well, of course, and they are the relevant ones in which the recommendation is put forward for this application to be approved.
I know there's a couple other questions, but just while you're holding the microphone, Michael, if I may. The information that Councillor Gibson has provided in his opening address, does that link in, that there are components that link into what is discretionary that can be put forward as a reason for refusal? That's the question.
If I may
Yes.
just take up the time on
Yes.
this point, because it is important.
Yes, it is very.
On in the agenda papers at page 36, there's a paragraph 19, and following from page 36 through to 39, you'll see a list of what we would refer to in the planning assessment as the discretions which are relevant for this application, where there has been a specific consideration of those planning scheme matters, i.e. the zone and code provisions, which actually require specific consideration. And again, just to make the point, they don't include reference to the Historic Heritage Code. However, they obviously include the question or the comment made in relation to setback, fettering and so on of agricultural land, which is referred to in the zone provisions. So it's in relation to these matters that the recommendation is for approval.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Did everybody understand that? What Michael was saying about the differences? Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Sorry.
Did you not? Yes.
No, I just didn't quite hear some of it. I'm just under the belief that what you're suggesting is a way that we can move forward without incurring a major cost. Is that what you were trying to say?
No, it wasn't. It was what we could actually, in reference to what the planning authority can argue on successfully to refuse. Michael was saying that the heritage, could you give me the exact title, please?
Historic Heritage Code. So one of the codes in the planning scheme is what I'm referencing, one of the codes, one of the components of the planning scheme.
And that was the part that you said was not, just for Councillor O'May's clarification, because he's probably absorbed everything that Councillor Gibson has quoted on that could be argued for refusal. But I just wanted to make sure that Councillor O'May understood at what you said the fettering can be argued on.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
But what did you say? The heritage.
Yeah, historic heritage code. That is not one of the considerations being referenced in the report in the papers. That isn't one of the grounds with which we would say it applies in this case.
Right. Okay.
So can I just clarify something here? Sorry. So what you're suggesting is what Councillor Gibson has suggested is not grounds that we can challenge this proposal on. Is that what you're saying? Sorry.
One of the grounds. Yes.
One of them is. One of them is.
One of the grounds that we can't oppose it.
That's right. Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to be clear on what we're talking about.
Specifically the land use question is a consideration, and the heritage component is not. To return to your central question around incurring costs and due process, we have the potential to incur significant costs if we do not make a decision, if we do not exercise our duty as a planning authority. We have council staff, in their professional opinion, have put forward a recommendation to approve. We have a motion tabled before us to refuse. We're establishing that of the two ideas that were put forward as part of that motion, only one of them is relevant, but that one, on its merits, appears to be a merit-based basis for refusal, in which case you would not incur undue costs.
The fettering.
It's the fettering one that is the discretion that we can consider.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I have lots of questions here. First of all, we have Councillor Clark, followed by Councillor Newell, followed by Councillor Lovell, then followed by Councillor Gibson. Councillor Clark.
Through you, Mayor, thank you very much. As most councillors here would know, and others probably, that I have fought very hard for this and tried to find a way to come to a consensual agreement with everybody. And my question is to the Director of Infrastructure. Look, I am all for this happening down there, but I do not want it to happen at the cost of the railway never being able to get up and going again. So if that shed is taken away, that workshop and all the equipment and everything that's stored in there, and the rail lines are taken over by this group, then Ida Bay Railway has no chance of doing anything as far as I'm concerned. And I did ask Parks and Wildlife what their suggestion would be, and they did suggest that the Transformer Group could build the shed, a workshop on the tennis court site, and the equipment could then be stored there to enable the Ida Bay Preservation Society to keep working away and maybe get it going. And I did ask, and we managed to get a bit of talks happening, and Director of Infrastructure, I think, did contact with Transformer of that, and we were hoping to have a letter to say that they would engage with Ida Bay Railway, but that didn't happen. And can I ask why? Did they give any answer to why they weren't interested in discussing that?
So a clarification I did not put to the applicant that they should build the shed. I should, because it's not part of their application, so that just stands alone.
Yes.
I did discuss with them some options, like putting a letter to register their intent to work in good faith, which they feel that they had. So through those conversations, they felt that they had to date, but declined to provide that letter. I believe the applicant wants to see an outcome and to move it through the process. We've already had an extensive process to get to this point in consideration of this. They've already agreed to extend it once so that we can have the time necessary to comprehend an application of this nature, and they want a decision. I think it's as simple as that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Neal.
Mine's more of a statement than a question there.
Oh, so you want your statement now?
Yep.
Okay.
That's okay. As Lockie's just said, the proponents have put in a lot of time, and they've already had some extensions to the time to put this in. I think we have to look at our job as planners with our planning hats on. I honestly think the only way the railway will ever be started again is if we encourage things like this down there and get some money and some people into the area to promote people to do it. I think the people have gone to Heritage Tasmania, and Heritage Tasmania have given them conditions that they can do the job. They've ticked a lot of boxes. They've spent a lot of money on the proposal, and I think if we want to in the future encourage these sort of people-friendly, environmentally friendly tourism applications to the Huon Valley, we need to encourage them, and it'll certainly be getting my approval, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newell. Councillor Lovell.
I just had a statement and then a question, if that's all right.
Yes, certainly.
So I just wanted to acknowledge all the representations that were sent in. There were a lot that couldn't be considered through the planning scheme, and then the rest that our department gave answer to. And we've all, as councillors, had a lot of communication back and forth from community members on this. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and it's really hard when you've got your planner's hat on and there's not a lot of things that you can say, you know, or yeah, it's really difficult, really difficult. My question is, through you, Mayor, you know, if we have grounds through the fettering of agricultural use or whatever it is, does that mean that wherever they put that, that's going to be fettering that use?
Can I answer that question? When it goes to RAMPAT, the whole process is started from scratch. And
sorry. I just would like Michael to hear what the question. Just want to make sure Michael's heard the question and the councillor's response, because you may be asked for advice again after. So,
on the grounds of arguing that what they've put before us is fettering the use, does that mean wherever it gets put on that site, even if it goes back and replanned, is it going to fetter the use? You know, if we're saying we're going to argue that it's fettering the use, we would then have to stand by that and argue that again, really, wouldn't we, if it's put to us again, if it's put somewhere else on that site?
It was definitely a question I asked myself, because I'm firmly support the transformer thing. There's two options. Well, for a start, there's the option for them to rezone the land, and as a council we would support that. There would be some cost in that. It is a tourism operation, so there's no, I mean, that's what it's going to be ongoing, so I think there'd be no problem with that. But my understanding, and I may be corrected on this, is that under RAMPAT, it's just like the whole process sort of starts again, and you don't necessarily have to discuss that point. it's you know, it can be just sort of left, from what I understand.
Might just now refer to our plan.
Yes, if I may respond through you, Mayor. In relation to what has been said so far, then it would seem that the relevant ground that we're talking about is the one that's referenced again on this report at page 36, and that is the first dot point in paragraph 19. So I understand the comments to relate to that provision, 26.3.3 of the planning scheme, which is the points raised there are expanded in the one of the attachments. That's the planning report, attachment C. So there's a lot more detail in the assessment of how that provision applies, including the relevant considerations about siting and where the development's sited on the property and proximity to boundaries and other uses. So it's that provision that's relevant, in my view. That is the issue that if it is the case that the planning authority is considering the refusal, then that is one ground, obviously, out of all those different grounds there. All those discretions are all matters that are for consideration. So in terms of the appeal, if there was to be an appeal, it will depend on what matters are what grounds the refusal are made on. So again, that is one of those points that could be referred to in the decision. When it goes to appeal, yes, it is the case that the tribunal will, if they're satisfied they have jurisdiction, they will go through the process of considering what were the grounds of the appeal that they need to consider. So that will depend on what the decision is that is made here today. And yes, it will depend then, of course, on what is to be the proposal that is put forward in terms of any change to that proposal that is considered at the appeal, and whether that then is considered by the tribunal to be suitable based on this provision here. Yes, that in terms of the council's direct involvement, it would be appropriate, in my view, for there to be a different planning representative, an external representative, consultant engaged to represent council's decision. That is, if it is to result in a refusal, and to put the submissions based on the grounds that are decided, you know, one or more grounds of the decision that are made.
Okay. Oh, yep, sure. Oh, thank you for reminding me. I've still got Councillor Gibson, I think, wants to ask a question, and then Councillor O'May, or I can go to Councillor O'May, then come back to you. I can't remember Councillor O'May, you've got a question?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Firstly, a question to Councillor Newell in regards to his comments. Do you not think that we, as councillors, believe that we would like to go ahead with this thing as well? I mean, I don't think you understand, but from what I understand, that all of us councillors most definitely want this project to go ahead. But as Councillor Clark has suggested, not in this particular spot is what the issue seems to be. We're all positive for any tourism adventure, but Just the particular location happens to be the issue. So, and as Councillor Gibson has underlined, with the heritage status of this particular workshop, and I know the area very well as well.
So do I, Councillor.
So, you know, like I've taken kids on this train line when they were young, and so is just about everybody else that's
So,
driving.
Councillor May,
Have you got a question?
I was going to say, just reminding everybody that we all derive at a certain point with asking questions and holding a position, and it's fair that everybody holds their own position and is not challenged. However, knowing that they might change their position as a result of questions being asked, and at that point, so we shouldn't really be.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Directly asking
I
that. So,
apologise,
all right,
Mayor, but I'm just...
I just wanted to
I
confirm
understand
that.
what's going on. But my main question I was going to ask is to our acting director, and that is one, as it's been quoted, a significant cost. Is there any idea or any indication on what a significant cost potentially would be in this regards? Because a significant cost could be a small amount to some people but a large amount to others. So I would just like, if it's at all possible, to give a ballpark figure or an indication so that we know what we're talking about.
Through you, Mayor, it's a potentially significant cost which could run into the tens of thousands of dollars, because it is then at the tribunal's discretion what other reports may be required for them to exercise their planning authority, which may be over and above what has already been put forward with the application. And the tribunal has been consistent in awarding those costs against councils, and they have a clear charter, and they would do so. So we can't establish what they would be because we don't know what that planning authority would require, but they could potentially run to tens of thousands because it is expert advice putting forward reports on a complex application. But I'll remind you again that we are not in that position if we make a decision in the for or against situation. We are only in that position if we declined to exercise our authority as the planning authority.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Gibson, then Councillor Prince.
Can I answer that question that I was asked from Councillor O'May? I just wanted to answer his question here. I keep hearing the word heritage, but we've been told we can't knock it back on heritage grounds because it has already been to Heritage Tasmania and there have conditions been put on the permit. For it to go ahead, they have to consider what Heritage Tasmania has told them to do. And on the ground of agriculture, I don't think it'll ever be agricultural ground, Paul. I mean, we could probably argue that zoning-wise, but she's pretty hard ground.
I had just, you were fine to reply, but for the same reasons, let's just let Councillor Gibson have his own position on that. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Clark.
Quickly, through you there, just in reference to what the Director of Infrastructure just said, after speaking to Dion Lester at Legat regarding the costs associated with any resource planning, etc., and if we had to go through that process again, this council may not be charged anything.
That's right.
If it all depends on how the application and how it all went. So there is a chance that we wouldn't have to pay. And that was his answer to me.
And it's whether you take the chance. Yeah. Sorry, you want to respond? Yes?
The only, if we make a decision and the decision is to, say, if the decision is to refuse and we are at the tribunal and the tribunal actually happens because we're inferring that it could, if that happened, the only cost that we would be definitely up for would be an external planning consultant, because we are going against, council would need to be having a planner represent your decision and put forward the merits of your decision, which is contrary to the merits that council's own staff have put forward. So there's only that cost if we refuse and it goes to tribunal. If we approve and it goes to tribunal, because that could also happen, we can use our own planners and we will not have costs, apart from just our existing staff costs.
Thank you. Yep, thanks. So Councillor Gibson, Councillor Prince, and then Councillor Campbell. Right.
Through you, Mayor, to Michael the planner. I just wanted to ask the question, why is it not considered as a heritage place? Why does that not get triggered when it is heritage listed and is possibly the most heritage thing we have in the valley?
The application was referred to Heritage Tasmania, and they have applied some conditions, which again their documentation is attached to the report. So that is the process for this application, given the status of the site. So it's a Heritage Tasmania listed site. It's not a site that for which the historic heritage code of the council's planning scheme directly applies to, and hence the assessment doesn't refer to that particular code. What's happened here is that the assessment's been done external to council by Heritage Tasmania, who have considered what they obviously need to consider and indicated consent to the application with some conditions which are in the documentation, and their conditions are also referred to in the draft conditions that are in the council report.
Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you. Councillor Prince.
A statement from me, Mayor. Acting as a planning authority, I am all for this development. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it'll do wonderful, brilliant things for that part of Tasmania and that part of our valley, which is fantastic. But also, as a planning authority, I'm not for making a decision that will potentially destroy any hope of seeing the Ida Bay Rail Preservation Society be able to make any progress whatsoever indefinitely. So, yeah, as a planning authority, I think there's two very challenging issues in the same report here.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a statement. I think that if we have this opportunity to take on particularly the fettering, I think we should be courageous enough for the sake of the Ida Bay Railway Preservation Society, who have been working very hard. They're also important to consider in this matter, because it is a unique opportunity for both Dark Lab and Ida Bay to work together. From my understanding, just from something that came through from the Director of Infrastructure, that Dark Lab appear, and if you correct me if I'm wrong, Director, but it appears that Dark Lab is happy for it just to go through. Now that doesn't, tonight at the meeting, I don't believe that is appropriate for, it's not good enough to me that we have a group of people who are vested in this. It's a wonderful opportunity for, the Transformer project, but I don't think it should be exclusive, and I don't think we should be actually just wiping away so many years of what's been down there and so many hours the volunteers put in for the sake of taking Dark Labs, I suppose their desire to work with Ida Bay, unless there's something where they're putting something forward. To me, if they could have put something forward tonight that guaranteed that they were willing to listen, then I'd accept them in good faith. But I actually don't accept them in good faith, because it's not hard to put something down and actually cooperate with people.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I think, Councillor Doyle, do you have any questions or statements you'd like to make?
No, I think all's been said there.
Thank you very much. All right. Then I've got a question. Not off the hook yet. So, in regards to if this application was refused this evening and then it ended up in REMPAT and for the reason of fettering, for example, is there a possibility? I'm sort of asking a question which I think I know the answer, but it's nice to confirm these things. If our decision of refusal was overturned because a fettering wasn't deemed to be deemed a strength, meaning not going in on multiple discretionary components, then what would that look like for our council in that sort of scenario with it being overturned? Because I'm thinking that if it was overturned, then we may wear the costs of the other person as well, like a lawyer's. Yeah.
Mayor, my response to that would be, I think that's a fair comment, that one of course can't be certain at all about the outcomes of other decision-making processes. So obviously there is risks associated with any appeal that goes before the tribunal in terms of how the costs will be allocated, and the tribunal is required to consider costs. It must do that as part of its decision. However, and again, without wanting to be trying to second guess things, in my view, the fact that if there is a reasonable basis on which to refuse the decision in the Planning Authority's view, and it relates to a matter from the planning scheme that we've referred to, then what will happen in the tribunal will be a discussion and submissions around merits and the positives and the negatives of the particular issues, and that's quite reasonable and expected, and that is what the tribunal is there to do, is to weigh up the different submissions to and against particular matters they have to decide. So it's not quite the same as the Acting Director was referring to, where a planning authority makes no decision. In other words, it doesn't make a decision to approve and doesn't make a decision to refuse. It makes no decision. The time for a decision passes, and then should an applicant in those circumstances refer the matter to the tribunal, then that's quite a different situation, because the time has passed for a decision to have been made, in which case there are some provisions of the legislation which in short mean that there has been a deemed approval for which the tribunal will then make a number of follow-up determinations and so on, and one of those will be as to costs, and in those sort of circumstances it's quite more likely that there would be an award of costs against the planning authority in those circumstances, because no decision's been made and that was what's required. So that's certainly not recommended, but a decision either to refuse or to approve this application, in my view, that's not unreasonable in terms of the type of discretions that have to be considered here.
Sorry, Councillor Doyle's dropped out. We need to phone her in.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry, just give me to do that for a moment. Dial 0 first.
Yes.
You want to adjourn? You want to adjourn the meeting for a moment, do you?
Yeah,
Okay, obviously desperate. Yes, okay. Right, I'm just going to put you on loudspeaker. Yes. I hope I'm not going to hang up on you now, because I should have done it a different way. Yeah? Are you there?
Yep, I'm there.
Oh, good, Sally, thank you. Sorry? Oh, yeah, I hope she, yeah. We'll just adjourn the meeting for a moment, Sally.
Okay, thank you. I'm fine.
All right, you're fine. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I have one question through you, Mayor, to the Director, I guess. If we approve this and a representative takes it to the tribunal, what are the costs then?
Through you, Mayor, if we approve, we are accepting our own planners' professional advice and we can continue to use them through that process.
Yeah.
So we will be it will be an existing staff cost. Obviously, it'll be through the continuation of that project and taking that planner off other planning matters. So we'll be incurring it through just operational expense.
And the REMPAT costs, like...
What you mean of the appeal, like filing an appeal, or
Yes.
Yeah, that's a matter for the for appellants to pay and deal with.
Okay.
So the scenario is different, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, as I said before, the scenario is
Yeah.
different. It would be less cost, and I believe it's just our staffing costs to be there as a... We would need to make a representation as part of that tribunal. Well, yeah.
I have another question, if that's all right.
Certainly.
The visual impact, I'm just going off memory here, the visual impact report had a few inconsistencies there too, where the ticketing office was in the frame of the photograph, and it was saying that there would be no visual impact. But the reality is that that ticketing office, as a part of this approval, is actually not going to be there. So I don't know whether it's better to have just to stick with one problem, or to say that that report, in fact, we have to doubt its validity because of that issue, and therefore refuse it.
So clarify, we or you?
Sorry?
Because you said we need to doubt its validity, but you are doubting its validity.
Well, if we as a planning authority doubt its validity, choose to.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just don't know, because I'm not 100% familiar with how it all works. So
is there a question that you have?
That is the
then?
question.
That is the
yes.
question. Is it valid? Is that what you're...
Well, is it valid that sort of mistake invalidates the report, and B, does it strengthen our case to have multiple...
We can't really answer that. Michael's thinking about it and might come in with something more to say, but the particular item you've raised is within the view of our planning professional. Within section 19 is the last stop point before section 20. So it's part E, 14 Scenic Landscapes Code. That is the summary that our planner has provided, which you would be effectively having to have a merits case against, is the question that you're raising.
So we'd have to claim that it does,
against that particular discretion.
Yes.
From what you're saying, whether the detail in the report is sufficient, I think it's very difficult to answer right now if that's going to be enough merit.
I guess, is it better to include that in this discussion?
Yeah, we can't advise on that.
No.
But I mean, you don't need.
Is there any harm?
You don't need multiple grounds for refusal.
Fine. Okay.
Okay. Another question?
Question to you, Mayor. If I were to support this proposal, which I believe I'm compelled to do, can I have it noted that I'm doing so as I am compelled to do as a planner, but I personally totally disagree with it? Is that at all possible?
We wouldn't normally include that sort of detail in minutes to meetings. We certainly have this recording, and you can certainly share this recording with people so that they can actually see you speak to that.
Well, I'm just concerned that I'm being asked to do something that I don't agree with. That's the way I feel is the problem. So
I think the director.
Sorry if that's conflicting. And
Yeah, it's all right. We might have a response. Yes.
Yeah, I think just to note again, you're compelled to make a decision, but I think what we're hearing is that Councillor Gibson has done the work to establish that there is a pathway for refusal, that you can accept that motion, and it will push it into, if that's the rest of if that's the way the vote goes, you are exercising your planning authority and saying no to it on the merits that you see before you. In which case, it may go into the tribunal. Yeah.
Okay.
So can I add to that then? So what we need to do is support Councillor Gibson with a seconder to move on with this.
You cannot ask a staff member about how we should vote.
No, sorry, with the process is what we've...
Yeah, so we have a refusal on the table at the moment.
It has been seconded.
Which has been, yeah. But we have a refusal on the table at the moment, and that's what we've been discussing.
Yes.
And
sorry, I was just trying to discuss the process, that's all.
Yeah, so that's that, and we're sort of at the end of our questions now, I think. I think we've run those out and we've run statements out. Councillor Doyle has heard everything around the table and she didn't have anything to add. I am not comfortable on the fettering of land. If there was more of a heritage focused, then I would have felt comfortable in, because that seems to be the main driver, is to protect the heritage values. And if I could have grasped onto something like that, then I would have felt really comfortable with that. But for me, refusing on the basis of fettering of land, I'm just not personally comfortable what might happen if it got to REMPAT based on that. And that's why I asked the overturning question, about the overturning of the decision and what might occur. So I just wanted to share that. But what we'll do now is, if we can put it to the vote.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's purely on planning, on a planning matter, and so I don't understand why.
I haven't seen any activity of fettering of what, animals, unlike some of the other stuff when we've challenged it. But this is my opinion, and you've got your position on it, and everybody else has. But I'm just saying that on that basis of fettering alone, I'm just sharing that I just don't feel safe on that as the only item to refuse it on. That's all I'm saying. Yes.
Put this to a vote. Can we? It's important that we have clarification on exactly what this motion is refusing.
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll need Councillor Gibson to refer to the relevant dot point under section 19.
I believe it's 26.6.3.
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you. All right. Does anybody want that read out?
Yes, please.
You'd like that read out? Could you, perhaps we get the director to read that out? Refusal. Yeah.
So just what bit to be reading out, but the motion is refusal on the clause of Part D 26.0 Rural Resource Zone, Clause 26.3.3.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so I'll put that to the vote.
Closing.
Oh, sorry, my apologies, Councillor Gibson. Yes, certainly. Yes, please, a closing remark.
I think this is broader human Valley community issue. I think everybody in this valley knows and loves that railway. This is an opportunity for us as a planning authority to actually have a refusal. There is legitimate, as we've heard, legitimate reason for that, albeit, as I agree with the Mayor, it's not the real issue, but it's the issue that we can deal with in the planning scheme. So I really think this is a chance where an opportunity for us to stand our ground and say, well, we do want to save this little railway.
Okay, thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour of refusing the application, can you please raise your hands, please? That's Councillor Gibson, Councillor Prince, Councillor O'May, Councillor Clark, Councillor Campbell, and your vote, Councillor Doyle? Are you for or against the refusal?
No, against.
You're against the refusal? Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. You can put your hands down. And those against the motion, hands up, is Councillor Enders, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Lovell and Councillor Newell, and it is it's carried. It's carried. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for the lengthy debate on it. It's very, very good indeed. If it's through you, General Manager, it would probably be really good for the councillors to have just some sort of briefing about where to from now. That would be very helpful so that they can anticipate what happens from this point forward. Thank you. I now advise that the council is no longer acting as a planning authority as at 8:24. Thank you very much. The next item that we have on our agenda is the cessation of the transitional building surveying services, agenda number 17.022/21. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Clark. A seconder, please. Councillor Lovell. Councillor Clark, do you have any opening remarks?
I just have a question regarding this. Obviously, you'll have a question through you, Mayor.
Yeah.
We are phasing out, obviously, the building surveying services for the council. I thought that had already happened.
You'd like an explanation?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. Yes, over to, through you, General Manager, to the Director.
Through you, Mayor, and thanks for the question. So we've had the opportunity to phase this out, as many local governments did back in 2004. So Huon Valley Council has been very generous in continuing that service to this point. We had a number of applications that were still open that were before council. They were lodged with council prior to August 2017. That August 2017 date was critical in that we had our staff member who was doing the services resigned, and we did not replace them. But given the matter that had already been lodged with us, we elected to continue with providing that service and did so through the engagement of a private building certifier. That's the arrangement that's been carried forward since then.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just ask the last thing you said since then?
From August 2017 onwards, we engaged a private building certifier to see through all applications that had been lodged with council prior to that August 2017 date. And what I should have said prior is that any applications lodged post August 2017, you are correct in that council has not been extending that service to new applications coming in from that date forward. It has really been honouring those aged applications, and now we're at a point where they are seriously aged. And yeah, we've reached the point where the surveyor themselves, who has the opportunity just to actually say, no more, has come to us, and we agree on an elegant phasing out of that service.
Sorry, just one more question. So that means that those people with the aged ones that haven't had their permits or their occupancy or completion, they have to reapply if they wish to further go ahead and get their compliance.
Where we won't be extending further, we won't be offering further extensions with the current building surveyor, and they can nominate, and we'll provide them advice on how they can nominate or engage an alternative private surveyor to continue those works if they don't believe they will be finished by the current expiry, the current valid date.
Right. Thank you.
That's okay. Any other questions at this point?
Yeah, so that.
So through the bear, yeah.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah. Sorry. So they won't have to start the approval process again. It'll only be the certification. Private certifier would come in and finish the work, so at their expense.
So the group of building applications we are referring to are the ones where there has been an application lodged and there has been certification provided by council's former building surveyors. So as the report says, after August 2017, council has arranged for a non-staff member, a private certifier, to carry forward those applications by inspections, by issuing final inspection certificates, and doing some other things to get those applications finished. There just are a number. We're down to about 250 that are still to be complete, and a number of those are expected to complete this year. There will be a few that carry over into next year, but in general terms, the expectation is that they should all, it can't be definite, but the expectation is that majority of the outstanding ones should be finished by about mid next year. So that's the service that we have got, but after this year, the intent is, the recommendation is for those private building surveying services that to finish basically.
Yes, Councillor Lovell.
I just have a question. Not sure if it's relevant to this report or if I'm way off track. So, and correct me if I am. I had a phone call from a resident last week that I'm not sure of the date it was. It was a few years ago. Their building was signed off by the person at the time that worked for council, and so they believed that they had their final completion. That's what they paid for and that's what they got. And then they just sold their house, and council have told them that they now have to pay for the final completion because for some reason that didn't get lodged with council. So they've got the paperwork on there. I'm just wondering, is this what you're saying here, or is this a completely different issue?
Well, this is about service provision, and what you're talking about is a particular resident. And
so there's been several that I've heard of in that same predicament. So is that anything to do with this phasing out of the survey? Like, did that happen, like the not being lodged with council? I'm just wondering if there's any relevance in that.
What might be useful is that when you come across those...
Yeah,
it's already been referred on. I'm just wondering if that's what this report...
Yeah, it's not related to this. Okay. But yeah, the Mayor's advice is correct. Refer them through, and if there's they have been referred through. Okay.
Okay, cool. Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you again to our acting director. Is there a reason why council would want to move away from this process? I mean, weren't we making money out of this operation? I just don't see the personal logic in why we would want to move away from an operation which, in my view, would have been self-sufficient by the funding that it's received through the development applications or the extensions or whatever else. And I just would have thought it would have been in the better interest to the community and the council to know what's going on around the place and who's doing what. So I'm just trying to, the question I'm trying to ask is, what is the merit of us getting out of this procedure that we've been involved in for a very, very long period of time and done very proficiently?
All right, so what is the merit of...
Sorry?
what is the merit you're asking? What is
Yes.
the merit of us departing
Yes, absolutely.
from building surveying?
I'll defer to Michael, who's you know, long-term closer to the economics of this particular issue, so he'll have a crack at answering that one. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. There are probably, in my view, two principal reasons. One is the cost to the council of the building surveying services that we're talking about. In broad terms, we are allocating in the development services area $50,000 to go to a number of things, including some of these services. It's not all of that, but it's a component of it. So it would, that's one aspect. The second is that in particular the length of time that these applications have had the standard time in which to complete building work, and of course that can be extended. It does start on the premise of 2 years to complete building work, and that can be extended. In many of the older applications, obviously that time frame is in some cases over a decade or more. Of importance is that for those buildings that are not reaching occupancy, then in a reasonable time, then council itself is missing some rate income as well. So hence the reason to try and expedite some of these older applications by the services that we have provided. And at one stage these applications were in this group, we had over 1,000 of them, but that's down to about 250 now. So there is a cost saving to council, and you know, that's probably the principal reason to recommend it.
Thank you, Mayor, but yeah, I still can't understand why, if the money side of things was the issue, that we just don't put the fees up. And secondly, I believe that there are other people in the community that might have very just reasons why they haven't completed, i.e. they might have passed away, or they just had bushfires go through, or a combination of several issues. So I just believe that every case should have been taken on its merits. So, but we just should be putting the price up on whatever it costs. So.
Just in relation to the price, fees and charges. So council sets fees and charges annually as part of its budget setting process. And then, the fees and charges then get submitted to David. The fees and charges, once the council has approved them, they then get submitted to what government body do the fees and charges get submitted to? Thank you. Because my understanding is that, you know, there is a review process about what councils charge for their fees. Is that correct? That we don't...
Mayor, no, I'm not aware of any other body that reviews our
isn't it?
fees and charges.
No. Okay.
Wrong state. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Thank you for answering that. That didn't answer your question. Apologies.
Sorry.
Is there any other questions? Councillor Doyle, do you have any questions? Councillor Doyle? All right, thank you. All right. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay. So, would anybody like to speak for the motion?
I'll just finish by saying that...
sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, because you'll get your roundup at the end.
Oh, okay.
Is there anyone to speak against the motion? That's okay. Would you like some closing remarks?
Apologies, through you, Mayor. Just to finalise on this, my understanding of it is that it is going to be outsourced now. Sorry, not outsourced. Council are not outsourcing it at all. It is going to be up to the person that's building to actually supply their own. Correct. And so the cost is on them now, entirely.
Yes, and it will bring them into line, through you, Mayor. It will bring these old applications, if they seek to continue them, it will bring them into line with all other applications that have been lodged since August 2017.
Thank you.
All right, then. I'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's all councillors. Councillor Doyle, is that an aye?
Aye.
Thank you. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. Once the closing remarks are done, that shuts off any further.
Yeah, I understand that, Mayor. I was just trying to get an explanation of what was said. That was all.
Okay. All right. So we now move on to the report, Curbside Waste Service Provision, Exemption from Public Tender Process, agenda number 17.023/21. I refer councillors once again to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Lovell, thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Gibson, thank you. Councillor Lovell, do you have any opening remarks?
No, thank you, Mayor. I'm happy with this report.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the floor? No? Anybody who would like to speak for the motion? Anybody who would like to speak against the motion? Okay. All right, so I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. And that's the motion's carried. Thank you. We'll now move to the Franklin Foreshore Rehabilitation and Development Project, agenda number 19.011/21. I refer councillors once again to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor O'May, thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Prince. Councillor O'May, do you have any opening remarks regarding this report, the recommendation of this report?
Yes, Mayor, I'd just like to support the recommendations here and agree that there's been a lot of work and congratulate staff, specifically Director Stevens, on the amazing work she's done here, and I think quite a few of us had a fair bit of input into this
over the time.
Document. We've been over it and workshopped it to death, so I do believe we've done a very good job over a period of years, so I'm very happy to see that the car dealer gets a few more mentions in here, and I just believe that it's all positive from here on in, and we should use that level of attainment to go to federal and state funders for even more progress in this area, to beautify this area, and to specifically use the Wooden Boat School as an educational facility and training facility through TAFE and whatever other means that we can potentially obtain funding and development for this area. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Right, thank you. Are there any questions regarding this report? Councillor Gibson, followed by Councillor Campbell.
I just have a question, and it sort of relates vaguely to this report, with regard to Shane Johnson's request to get alternative funding for the velodrome, and where council can support that. What's the mechanism for supporting that?
Is that in the recommendation?
No, it's not in the recommendation.
No, it's not.
No. So in regards to the velodrome,
yeah,
that would be the only response really probably that the director can provide us is what they have provided us in previous workshops is around the grant deed and the specific area, the focal area of the actual Franklin foreshore funding from the government. It's very specific in its location. Correct me if I'm wrong, Beck. And we have I know we've discussed at one point in time about whether that money could be used somewhere else outside of that area. And it's very specific that the grant deed is for that particular area, a working waterfront.
So it's a totally separate issue.
Yeah, that's the Franklin Sporting Precinct is what you're referring to.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Just through to the Director of Community Services, Ben, could you
through
tell
the
me...
chair? Yep.
Yeah, I did say that.
Yep.
Yeah, I said through you,
Okay.
Bear. Yeah, sorry. It is just asking on that one, Beck, about the risk implications, number 12. Could you just tell me there will be some community members who will disagree with the proposed outputs? What does that mean?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Campbell. Through you, Mayor. The scope that was approved back in the original council meeting obviously included a number of elements. One element that pops to mind at the moment is the public toilet. So there will be differing views as to why we're changing the scope and narrowing it back to the recommended outputs, which are those in the resolution tonight. So that's what the outputs are referring to, those three points within the recommendation.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Lovell? Yes.
Just following on from that through you, Mayor, have you had anything so far?
Through you, Mayor, there has been slight meetings with the Living Boat Trust and the Wooden Boat Centre, so they are aware that we are looking at the pontoon. We haven't gone to the broader community on the scope and changing the scope or reducing the scope of the original master plan that was approved. They are aware that we are still recommending the pontoon for Wooden Boat Centre and the construction of the anchor point and pontoon for the Living Boat Trust. So those two key stakeholders, Councillor Lovell, have been engaged in the conversation.
Any other questions? Councillor Doyle, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Therefore, is there anybody who would like to speak for the motion? Is there anybody who would like to speak against the motion? Councillor May, do you have any closing comments?
No, thank you, Mayor. I think we've pretty much gone over it here tonight and many times previously in our workshop. So good to see we've got some progress going here.
All right, I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Aye.
And that's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. Right, if we could just stay recording while we move into closed, just so that is recorded that we're moving into close. So yes, it's that time again of the evening. Thank you to those in our gallery, and you've stayed the whole time. Congratulations. And we might see you next time if you take the big drive up. Thanks very much. The next meeting of council is on Tuesday the 26th of October. That's Tuesday the 26th of October. Just something a little bit different for one of our months. And so the recommendation is that the meeting now be closed to the public as at... 8:46. Pursuant to Regulation 15 of the Meeting Procedures Regulations to discuss the following matters. And